Hello again and welcome back to another video, and today we are looking at a scenario where all French-speaking countries unite. For this French-speaking title, I took nations where around or more than 40% of the population can speak or at least understand the French language. This of course includes mainland France, southern Belgium, a part of western Switzerland, a decent amount of northern Africa with Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. A lot of Central Africa with Cameroon, Gabon, the Congo, and the DRC, along with Benin, Togo, and the Ivory Coast. We also have some more random ones such as Lebanon or Djibouti, French Guiana, which is part of France, and of course the territory of Quebec that they have taken from Canada. This would become quite the world power if it came into the world today, but it still would not be a global superpower, not nearly as strong as the Americans, and probably not as strong as you'd think. These areas in Central Africa are not the richest by any means. They are actually some of the poorest territories in the world. Right there. These northern African territories, though, I could definitely see be integrated more and more so as a part of mainland France, along with Quebec, whilst these Central African territories are treated far more like a colony or just another area that they happen to control, whilst these North African and mainland French lands are actually, at least in their eyes, lands that deserve to call themselves French. Let's go ahead and begin with what I'm going to do today, which is an expansionist version. No alliances. Go at it, get as big as you can, get as strong as you can. They are going to begin this off by, of course, declaring war on the rest of the Benelux, including northern Belgium and the Netherlands. Not really a big challenge for them as they swiftly push up in the south and capture both nations. From there, they begin a massive Central African push into Mali and Niger, but if you don't know, there's something here called the Sahara Desert, which makes it nearly impossible for French troops to push into the north. Thus, the point at which most of the fighting will be happening will actually be going out of the Ivory Coast and going out of Togo and Benin. War is normally not good, but these regions will actually see mass industrialization as the French are forced to build up infrastructure if they want to continue and win this war. They swiftly capture most of the important regions of Niger and begin to seep into Mali from all sides, besides the Mauritanian border. They cut off a lot of the most populated regions, capturing them, and soon enough all of southern Mali falls, leading to both nations surrendering. Of course, in the process they are both annexed. These two actually have some French-speaking majorities in certain areas as well. Not as high as the nations I counted, but most old French colonies have some amount of the French language sticking around, and it is quite the universal language, at least in their previous colonies. From there, they annexed Burkina Faso and Ghana to better connect these territories. They also know that this kind of western coast along the Gulf of, basically along the Ivory Coast, Cameroon, and Gabon coastlines, that is leading to a lot of these West African colonies. To secure that, they basically forced Nigeria into giving up its control of these waters entirely. They annexed New Guinea and the rest of the islands in the waters. They technically do go to war with Nigeria, but since the French cannot get enough supply to destroy them well, and frankly the Nigerians would fight well enough to hold them off, the French really don't want to do that, and instead offer the Nigerians a deal in which the French basically gain full naval dominance and are able to ship supplies through the Nigerian country. From there, they look at West Africa and basically think the opposite. These are far weaker states that can be far more easily pushed around. And they do so fairly successfully. They capture much of the West African coast, securing their position on the African continent as the largest and by far the strongest nation. Closest rival would probably be Egypt, and that would not even be close. From there, to further secure these territories, they invaded Mauritania, Western Sahara, and Senegal, who all also have fairly large French-speaking communities inside. They swiftly annexed these territories, securing their control of Western Africa and their influence along the Atlantic, as they have the longest actual working coastline on the Atlantic. Probably not the largest coastline as a whole. If you didn't know, try and guess which nations have some of the largest coastlines on Earth. You might be thinking some of the largest countries like Russia or the US, and they have very large ones too. Canada as well, with all of their islands, but some of the ones that have some of the longest and some of the highest amounts of islands are actually the three Nordic brothers of Finland, Sweden, and Norway. By this time, the French have also begun to integrate and fully annex Belgium and the Netherlands, who they had been attempting to convert further into the French nationality before a full annexation was possible. They are also looking to secure their influence along the Mediterranean, so they begin some much larger and significantly more difficult wars of dominance against Spain, Greece, and Syria, along with Libya. This is going to be probably their most difficult fight yet, but it is really still not going to be that big of a challenge. Spain is the toughest player here, but even mainland France is stronger than these three countries combined. Along with the new strength they've gained, I don't see any doubt they'll win. Along with that, they declare war on Cyprus and Malta, although you obviously can't see that. They swiftly begin an invasion to northern Libya, capturing Tripoli and many other northern territories. They begin to push down to Barcelona along the Catalonian coast and naval invade in the south, capturing the entire region, along with Valencia and the entire Mediterranean border, including the Balearic Islands. They then land on the island of Crete and slowly hop their way to southern Greece. They capture Athens and push up to the mountains where Greek resistance expands, and moving out of Lebanon, they capture the Syrian coast and swiftly push down and capture most major Syrian cities. They then aid a Kurdish rebellion, which takes place in an effort to hold their public image, at least at a somewhat respectable place. They continue their invasion into Libya by naval invading near practically any lasting major cities, and after expanding slightly more, the nation capitulates. They also use this naval invasion as a massive advantage, getting past the Pyrenees Mountains and continuing their expansion into northern Spain. With the fall of Madrid, Spain also capitulates, and Greece is not too far behind, as they have lost all of their cities a while ago. It has been mostly guerrilla fighting, and that really cannot last forever either. This new peace treaty is going to secure full French control of the Mediterranean by taking over all of Libya, actually. No. They are looking to unite all French speakers, not to conquer every nation. They instead split Libya with Egypt in hopes of good relations. They then split Syria with Kurdistan, as Kurdistan gets the east, whilst the French get the west. In Greece, the French take all islands along with the southern peninsula and create a vassal state out of the rest. For now, it will be occupied, but the point is to put in a French, basically accepting government that will support the French in their war plans of the future. The French technically do not puppet Kurdistan, but they are in fairly good relations. And thanks to the land being practically handed over to Egypt, while Egypt was actually internationally condemning the French for their wars, their relations could expand significantly as Egypt stopped seeing them as fully warmongering, and more so trying to secure their influence in the world. In Spain, the peace treaty might actually be the lightest, or the harshest, depending on who you ask. All of southern Spain will fall to secure the entrance of the Mediterranean, along with a piece of coastline, whilst in the north, a part of Catalonia and the Basque Country will be taken by mainland France. These are not French-speaking lands, merely expansions to the French nation. A Greater Catalonia will be created, along with Greater Galicia. The rest of Spain will be put under a French client state, whilst the regions of Catalonia and Galicia are directly occupied by the French. They also managed to annex all microstates on their border. It's an incredibly easy fight. I'm surprised I didn't do it sooner. There would not be a challenge at all. I don't even want to show it. With this new peace treaty, France is doing quite well for themselves, really. Within the next year, they have created the client government in Greece, which now controls the territory under a French, basically aligned governor. They have mostly integrated their new lands, and although they are still just occupying Catalonia and Galicia, they are gaining more and more self-governance by the day. This France is really turning into the global union that they tried and failed before, except this time it is through far more war. They're also attempting to put the British back in their place by expanding their fleet to surpass the British, expanding their army, and expanding coastal forts to have full control of the English Canal. They're not planning any immediate wars, but if one does happen to break out, they are fully prepared. They also swiftly come to a deal with Canada, in which they gain all eastern lands left, as Canada was struggling to supply them without French allowance, and in return, the French give the Canadians a good amount of money. I couldn't say exactly what the agreement would be based off of new conditions at the time. This is already a fair amount of time into the future. But for these expansions, the French would most definitely have to pay a large sum of money, despite the fact that they're definitely not the most important lands. Although this has secured French interests in North America, there is absolutely no way, even given time, even if they expand further, they cannot defeat the Americans here. American state is still far more powerful than them, and they are going to have to try and grow strong enough to even rival the US. Although, seeing as they control about half of Africa and a good portion of Western Europe, I can see the Americans at least trying to fix relations for better trading deals, as the rest of the world has already done. Okay. From here, the French will basically continue their expansion into Western Europe by destroying Portugal. They annex all Spanish and Portuguese colonies in the Atlantic, while setting up a client state in Portugal, directly occupying the south of the state to basically punish it for putting up a fight. Not going to map this out, it's fairly obvious how it would go, but Iberia is now fully subjugated, allowing the French full access to the Atlantic, along with many islands in the region to help them out. To further secure their interests in the Americas, they start the Great American Push, which is just attacking a large amount of weaker nations. The Americans may try and justify war over this, but I don't think they would. At this point, relations with this new France aren't amazing, but they are absolutely necessary, similar to how American-Chinese relations are in our world. And the French allow the Americans to take over the Bahamas and practically annex Canada. Canada is still technically a separate state, but it is fully under American dominance. The French also assist the Americans in assaulting Nicaragua and other regimes such as the Venezuelan one, while allowing the Americans full control of these territories. This agreement has proven to be fairly beneficial for all sides. The French do not occupy any of these lands. They create a client state in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, ruled by a Dominican leader who had risen up in favor of French rule. Although the Haitian territory is the one that the French are most concerned with. They annex the rest of these lands to once again secure their interests in all of the Americas now. This hasn't helped relations with the Americans, but as I mentioned before, they did come to an agreement with the US about the division of the continent, in which the US got to overthrow any unfriendly regimes, directly integrating Cuba and the Bahamas, whilst creating puppets in Nicaragua and Venezuela. They also didn't have to share any of that land, as once again the French were there to aid them, and that was more than enough. The French soon also started excursions into Denmark, hoping to gain all of Greenland and possibly Iceland as well. After a swift war, the French blow up the entire Danish fleet and bomb the country until they agree to give up all of Greenland, and a further fairly short invasion of Iceland will result in both annexations by France. At this point, they are now a fairly respectable power. Their expansion hasn't been insane, but they have definitely grown into one of the largest and most powerful countries on the planet. Not what I wanted. They might cause a few more annexations, put down some territory in Germany. In fact, they will. You know what? Let's make the final war of this video interesting. A conflict in the British Channel. Oh my god, why can I not speak English? But a fight in the North Sea breaks out, in which the French and the British end up at war. The British managed to call in a sort of alliance they had created together with Germany and Italy, an anti-French bloc, if you will, and little old Denmark also joins in hopes of getting revenge. That won't exactly work out, but you know what? They're trying, okay? They're trying to be helpful here. The French are going to immediately have the advantage, though, as if you look at this on a map, it's really not that fair. They also have a new ally in Ireland, who has agreed to join in hopes that the French will liberate all territories that the UK has occupied for an absolutely absurd amount of time. The French quickly push in and capture the entirety of the Rhineland, one of the most important regions of Germany. They also push up in the north to capture the key trading city of Hamburg, which is where most British troops and supply were being shipped in. They attempt to ignore the mountains near Soot. They attempt to ignore the Alpines, but that doesn't exactly work. They fight along the border with Italy, as Italy is set on making the French fight in unfavorable terrain. The French, though, do manage to somewhat ignore this and capture the city of Rome. They also capture the island of Sardinia and a decent amount of the island of Sicily. Oh god, I'm all tongue-tied. From there, they continue their assault near Rome to cut Italy into two, and with that, Italy is practically dead. An assault up the coast captures Venice and Milan. They push down basically the Italian peninsula all the way down to the Boot, and without even meaning to, really, the French have capitulated the Italians. With the Italians dead, the French are able to focus their full force onto Germany, where they manage to capture all of Bavaria. This has gone incredibly well, and soon enough, the German nation surrenders in hopes of not being fully carved up. The French use this opportunity fully to start to push up into Denmark, who is really, really wishing they hadn't joined this, as it's not looking good at all. The British have done something, though. They have managed to push into Ireland, fully capitulating the nation, as French aid was not able to arrive in time. However, the British will not have the last laugh. The French continue their invasion up the Danish mainland, but also manage a naval invasion of Copenhagen, and with that, the Danish nation surrenders. It is now just France versus Britain. We have been in this situation before. France being ruler of the continent, except before, the British were the rulers of the sea. In this case, the French control the seas, the air, and the land. They have every possible advantage. The British will attempt to hold out, but the French will manage to naval invade in southern England, both in eastern and western southern England. They push into the entire south, encircling the city of London and capturing it soon after. With this massive push, the Irish rebel, of course with French aid, and quickly manage to reassert most of their nation as their own. The British at this point are already considering a peace, but once Wales falls, that is completely out of the question. The French are not looking for a peace here. They are looking to destroy the British before they can rise back up. Although with the fall of England and the secession of Scotland, the British don't have a choice but for a full surrender to the French forces. The French will not be too greedy here and will not take all of the land for themselves, but instead only take a portion of the Rhineland out of Germany. Possibly not even that much, just a slight amount of land in the south and the center to better connect up with the Dutch. They would also take a piece of land along the coast to secure North Sea access. The peace treaty with the Italians would be slightly harsher as they take the entire Alpine region and push down the coast slightly, taking many Italian majority territories. Sorry. But the Italians really cannot do anything about it. The French have before used the mountains, the rivers, everything, the coast, to defend themselves, but now they are looking to get rid of it so they can exert their influence more completely. They do agree to give back some of the territories, but Italy is still destroyed. The north is directly occupied, whilst the south is turned into a puppet regime. We also see that the Vatican expands by 0.01 miles. Let's go. The Vatican is now larger, and for the first time in a long time, the Papal States have expanded. Along with this, the French will be taking some British ports and the British Navy in the hopes of destroying any British chances of revival. They also release a Welsh state and a Scottish state, whilst giving Ireland back the north. Britain is divided up between a French-occupied territory, including the City of London, and a French puppet regime, which is put in place in the rest of England. The UK has been thoroughly defeated. A similar fate will meet Germany, who, although did agree to surrender sooner in hopes of a later peace, will still have the Rhineland occupied for a decent amount of time, and even after that will stay demilitarized and under French control. As for Denmark, they are not split up. They are far too small for that. They are merely turned into a puppet government with the French completely in control of the nation. Well, the French have done it. For once, they have not thrown up the white flag, and they have made others throw up the white flag instead. They have conquered every enemy they could possibly have on the mainland, and although I doubt they would be looking for too much further expansion, they have united all the French people of the world and other people who didn't even know they wanted to be French, and when they found out they now were French, they still didn't want to be French. But hey, they got to do it anyway. The island of Sicily and Sardinia are also taken. Don't know if I mentioned that or not. Meanwhile, Scotland is given full independence, and Ireland is turned into an ally. A few more smaller wars will be happening, which I will just play in the background. But the French have now fully secured just about everything they wanted. And they also turned Wales into a full puppet state, instead of giving it independence like they did to Scotland. These final few wars are going to be happening in the Middle East, which is the last area where France wants to confirm its dominance, against Jordan, Iraq, and Turkey, surprisingly enough. Turkey has been a complete pain for the French, a fairly powerful country near their border, who has been putting up anti-French propaganda in Greece and in Syria for longer than they could know now. But they swiftly begin an invasion of the nation, showing that Turkey really does not stand up to this new French might, and in fact, Kurdistan actually joins in. Wait, what did I just say? I don't know what I just said, but they will finally be getting their independence, recapturing their territories from Turkey and Iraq. With the fall of Baghdad, the entirety of Iraq will capitulate. Jordan could not do any better, and with the fall of Istanbul and the entire coastline, Turkey will soon enough capitulate as well, leading to the complete dismembering of all of these nations. The French directly annex all of southern Turkey. Actually, that might be a bit too extreme. These French have actually been fairly, not too bad when it comes to peace treaties. They slightly annexed their Syrian state in all directions, giving them this part of Jordan, whilst puppeting the rest. The Kurds are allowed to retake all territories that have been claimed by them, whilst Iraq is turned into a French puppet state. Wow, yeah, that is a very, very powerful Kurdish state. That is very, very good for them. Not great for the Turks, but a fairly powerful ally for the French. France considers an invasion of Iran, but at this point, they don't really have to. They have secured their influence over the entire world, and with these new territories in the Middle East, they have secured many more resources that are necessary to continue. The Greeks will also be given many lands along the coast to basically say thank you, as the Greeks were actually the ones who were putting up with the brunt of the fighting here, whilst the French simply sent over a lot of soldiers to deal with the rest. The Greeks were the ones who were partially occupied and attacked, and now the Turks will, to some extent, pay for that. Syrian expansion doesn't really matter, but this has secured their control over the Mediterranean with these new Turkish ports and the Turkish, basically, enemy completely destroyed. Along with puppeting the entire nation, the region around Istanbul, which will now be renamed to Constantinople, will be directly controlled by the French, along with southern Turkey, which will be occupied by the French. Along with that, Jordan and Iraq are now puppet states. I am going to end it here. This new French state has turned itself into an absolute superpower, probably deserving of the name by now. If not, then still a great power who have subjugated all of Western Europe. An invasion of Switzerland is likely, possibly going further and further into Central and Eastern Europe. The Middle East is up for grabs. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.